all of these different ways. They built a satellite listening site, right? We can call these foreign satellite collection. Where out in the desert somewhere, they built a big parabolic collector, and it's just listening to satellite emissions, right? But these satellite emissions, these satellite links, were owned by militaries. They were exclusive to governments, right? It wasn't affecting everybody broadly. All surveillance was targeted because it had to be. What changed with technology is that surveillance could now become indiscriminate. It could become dragnet. It could become bulk collection, which should become one of the dirtiest phrases in language, if we have any kind of decency. But we were intentionally, this was intentionally concealed from us, right? The government did it, they used classification. Companies did it, they intentionally didn't talk about it, they denied these things were going. They said, you agreed to this, and you didn't agree to nothing like this. I'm sorry, right?
Terms of service.
We put that terms of service page up, and you clicked it. You clicked
I ain't watching
it.
yet.
I agree. Because you were trying to open an account so you could talk to your friends. You were trying to get driving directions. You were trying to get an email account. You weren't trying to agree to some 600-page legal form that even if you read, you wouldn't understand. And it doesn't matter even if you did understand, because one of the very first paragraphs in it said, this agreement can be changed at any time unilaterally without your consent by the company, right? They have built a legal paradigm that presumes records collected about us do not belong to us. This is sort of one of the core principles on which mass surveillance, from the government's perspective in the United States, is legal. And you have to understand that all the stuff we talk about today, the government says everything they do is legal, right? And they go, so it's fine. Our perspective as a public should be, well, that's actually a problem, because this isn't okay. The scandal isn't how they're breaking the law. The scandal is that they don't break the law. Is that whenever you carry the phone, whenever the phone is turned on, there's a record of your presence at that place that is being made and created by companies. It does not need to be kept forever. In fact, there's no good argument for it to be kept forever, but these companies see that as valuable information, right? This is the whole big data problem that we're running into. And all of this information that used to be ephemeral. Where were you when you were 8 years old, you know? Where were you? Where'd you go after you had a bad breakup? You know, who'd you spend the night with? Who'd you call after? All this information used to be ephemeral, meaning it disappeared, right? Like the morning dew, it would be gone. No one would remember it. But now, these things are stored. Now, these things are saved. It doesn't matter whether you're doing anything wrong. It doesn't matter whether you're the most ordinary person on Earth, because that's how bulk collection, which is the government's euphemism for mass surveillance, works. They simply collect it all in advance in hopes that one day it will become useful. Your primary threats are these bulk collection programs. So your primary threat is the fact that your phone is constantly squawking to these cell phone towers. It's doing all of these things because we leave our phones in a state that is constantly on. You're constantly connected, right? Airplane mode doesn't even turn off Wi-Fi really anymore. It just turns off the cellular mode. Nobody has a privacy right for anything that's held by a company. And so long as they do that, companies are going to be extraordinarily powerful and they're going to be extraordinarily abusive. And this is something that people don't get. They go, oh, well, it's data collection, right? They're exploiting data.
I got stressed out.
Lives. It is data about people. These records are about you. It's not data that's being exploited. It's people that are being exploited. It's not data that's being manipulated. It's you that's being manipulated. And this is something that I think a lot of people are beginning to understand. The problem is the companies and the governments are still pretending they don't understand or disagreeing with this.
Your smartphone follows you wherever you go, tracks your movement, and stores all kinds of personal data. That is hard enough to get used to. But what about the...
Let me just say something, what I think. But they gonna save all that metadata and all this bulk collection shit, and then when they finally get the superconductor technology and all that shit, and the interference technology for quantum computers. When they get that shit down pat, that's what they're gonna use it for. They're gonna use it for they're gonna use that metadata. They're gonna input that shit into that quantum computer, bro. Into the AI, should I say? Instead of, I ain't gonna say the quantum computer. They're gonna put it into the AI, which might have a quantum processor component on it. Because there's a quantum computer can't do everything that a regular computer can do. It could just do other things better, like certain things better, but it's still things that a regular computer can do better. And pretty soon they're gonna start coming out with optical computers, which is gonna be like regular computers but faster, because electrical computers are reaching their limits with the transistor size. So next it'd be, I guess, the quantum computers, but quantum computers really next as far as day-to-day use, like as far as from a personal computer standpoint, it's gonna be optical computers. I think it's gonna be optical computers, but they're gonna use that to make the AI. They're gonna use optical computers and quantum computers to make the AI that they're gonna input that metadata into, and they're gonna use that to basically predict our behavior, and basically use it to like bend us to their will, kind of.
You got your phone spying
Or
on
manipulate us,
conversations.
not bend to will, manipulate.
Business model which used to translate
They probably already doing it.
We run ads. The system that's watching everything you do is collecting.
You know, the
records of
government,
every phone call in
the
United
military
States.
40
If you
years
look around at
ahead.
the world right now, when you look at
That's one thing you gotta know.
news coverage,
The military is always 40 years ahead of the public, technology-wise. You know what I'm saying? So the technology in the Pentagon is 40 years ahead. Anybody from the 80s will tell you that. You know what I'm saying? Anybody who was in the Pentagon back in the day, or anywhere near some state-of-the-art military installation, they'll tell you that. You know what I'm saying? The technology been there. Touch screens and flat screens and shit been there since the 80s.
Diversity that we see, something has changed. Data security, surveillance, the internet, manipulation and influence that's provided or produced rather by corporate or governmental control of this permanent record of all of our private lives that's being created every day by the devices that we have.
If technology is going to be the servant rather than the governor, it has to serve the interests of humanity, and humanity does not have to serve it. We are in a situation now where humanity is serving technology.
For more than 100 years, the telephone companies have provided wiretapping assistance to governments. For much of this time, this assistance was manual. Surveillance took place manually, and wires were connected by hand, calls were recorded to tape. But as in so many other industries, computing has changed everything. The telephone companies built surveillance features into the very core of their networks. I want that to sink in for a second. Our telephones and the networks that carry our calls were wired for surveillance first and foremost. What that means is that when you're talking to your spouse, your children, a colleague, or your doctor on the telephone, someone could be listening. Now that someone might be your own government, it could also be another government, a foreign intelligence service, or a hacker, or a criminal, or a stalker, or any other party that breaks into the surveillance system, that hacks in to the surveillance system of the telephone companies.
They can read your email, they can collect every document, they can look at your contact book, they can turn the location services on, they can see anything that is on that phone instantly and send it back home to the mothership. They can do the same with laptops.
Alright, they kind of saying the same shit back in, like, over and over now. It's like, okay, we get it. They got control of the phone, bro.
The other prong that we forget so frequently is that in many cases they don't need to hack our devices. They can simply ask Google for a copy of our email box, because Google saves a copy of that. Everything that you ever typed into that search box, Google has a copy of. Every private message that you've sent on Facebook, every link that you've clicked, everything that you've liked, they keep a permanent record of. And all of these things are available not just to these companies, but to our governments as they are increasingly deputized as sort of miniature arms of government.
What about enabling your microphone camera?
If you can do it, they can do it. It is trivial. We turn on your microphone.